To begin today, I want to really encourage everybody to settle into that place within ourselves, that place of stillness, and that place of silence, and that place of spaciousness that's ever present. It's enduring. It's the nature of ourselves, and from this place, just gently reflect on the past day. And to bring forth the presence of, something that was inspiring within the last day. And then now to simply hold that inspiration. I wasn't sure who was going to be in the call here today, and at least four of us have connections to Hawaii. Janet, do you have any connections to Hawaii?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
But she's on the West Coast. She's a lot closer. She was going to reach out and touch it.
She is.
My daughter's been there, but I have
not. I want to, really offer an aloha. And it was about 2.5 years ago that I first came from the Yukon in northern Canada to the land of aloha, to Hawaii. And to me, I thought aloha was just the way you say hello, and maybe with a little loving kindness, or a bit more than that. And it's been a lovely sort of endeavor into really gleaning into this meaning of aloha. And aloha, at least in the native Hawaiian tradition, is really the intelligences with which we meet life. It is gleaning in to what isn't said. It's gleaning in to what isn't seen, and to knowing that there's this enduring affirmative nature in it. When we look at the word aloha, what we have is presence of breath, the presence of the breath of life. We started off with with reflecting back on an inspiration. If we look at the original essence of the word inspiration, we're referring to what breathes life into us, this aloha-ness. And this is an example, aloha, of me going to Hawaii and seeing aloha as a greeting, as a surface structure. But when we look into the deeper, the depth structures, there's an entirely different world that is present. There is this unity beneath diversities, this oneness beneath pluralities. Plato said that ultimately a big part of life is about fleeing the many to find the one, and in finding the one, embracing the many as the one. And of course, Ken Wilber, the integral philosopher, cites Plato in that capacity. Before we leave aloha behind for right now, I'm going to draw on aloha as an acronym. And this acronym is brought to us by Antti Palahi-Paki, who's known as a Native Hawaiian poet and philosopher. And she articulates aloha in this way: as grace, meaning kindness, to be expressed with tenderness; in an unbroken way of unity, to be expressed with harmony; in a way that is gentle, agreeable, to be expressed with a pleasantness; and as emptiness. And it was that emptiness that we attempted to, at the start, to touch into, the place of silence, of stillness, of spaciousness, a transcendent space from which a transformative place might emerge, a fullness from an emptiness. And alas, of course, this waiting for the moment, this patience, this endurance to be expressed with perseverance, with persistence. Now, Ken Wilber relies very, very heavily on what's known as the perennial philosophy. And it's this perennial philosophy that reflects these enduring principles of aloha, or the unity that's beneath all these diversities, that Ken Wilber really established. This is where we build community. This is where we not only resolve conflict, but this is where we dissolve conflict. Because there's agreements, there's coherence that is coming from, those deeper structures beneath. And so that's a quick little introduction into integral philosophy in a way. The word integral refers to making whole, to making complete, to making one. Reflective of that. Same way as integrity and integrated, bringing together these disparate fragments so that there's this oneness, this one that's beneath. And of course, philosophy refers to this love of wisdom, this wisdom that is enduring, that is beneath and beyond, that holds us common, that is perennial across cultures across the world. Whether I'm here in Pennsylvania and you're on the West Coast, or in the Midwest, or in any country in the world, we hold these enduring spaces. And that's a pretty awesome place to be, a place that is really full of awe. And so this course, this program, the Reflective Practitioner program, and this first course, this first course is really focusing on integral theory. It's an introduction to integral approaches. Subsequent courses, should we go in that direction, we'll explore more of what it means to be a reflective practitioner. And I'm reminded of Viktor Frankl. And of course, Viktor Frankl was in the Nazi concentration camp. And in observing, people being in this horrible, horrible situation, he identified that those who smoked their last cigarette, who just kind of gave up on life, that they didn't have this stillness, this silence, this spaciousness between a stimulus and a reaction. There wasn't the responsiveness. There wasn't that aloha responsiveness. And he derived a whole sort of theory around this sort of existential way of making meaning. And so that's a quick little introduction into integral. I want to now allow all of us to introduce ourselves, and introduce ourselves in a way that, we might say is me in a minute. Oftentimes we, look at ourselves as all of these, but who are we when we integrate, when we look at that essence and that enduring nature? Who is me in a minute? Is place important to me in a minute? What's important? It's going to be different to all of us. So I've been talking a bit here. I want to suggest perhaps Emmanuel, maybe you could open us with me in a minute. And one final remark is that throughout this program, we're going to encourage everyone to have a project. And the project can just be, anything that is personally meaningful to essentially apply what we're learning. So sort of a holding space. Emmanuel, would you introduce yourself to us in roughly a minute?
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction, Devin. I'm Emmanuel. I'm originally from Austria and currently in Iowa, where I'm a PhD student at Maharishi University of Management. And that's where Devin and I met, and we've been working together for the last couple of years. And I've been really, exploring this kind of integral developmental framework for the last few years as part of my dissertation and my PhD research work. And one of my goals is to kind of get more into a coaching and consulting area using these kinds of methods and tools moving forward. And I'm really excited about co-hosting this course with Devin. And kind of learning from this experience. So yeah, I think that's me in a minute.
Thanks, Emmanuel. And I just want to, point out that for me, the context that I'll be applying for here is this course itself. So what I'm learning will be immediately backfed in. And Emmanuel, I'm curious what might be the project that you might be holding for this initiative. You pointed to coaching, and I'm just would like to make that explicit.
Oh yeah. So for me, the kind of application is to, how does this relate to kind of a coaching methodology, and how could I apply some of the things that we're exploring in more of a coaching one-on-one area? Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emmanuel. Let's proceed to Ryan, and then Cheryl and Janet, and then I'll close with a few comments and an introduction as well.
Hi, I'm Ryan. It's great to be here and see everyone. I'm originally from the Big Island of Hawaii, where I first met Devin and Emmanuel, and now live in Portland, Oregon. And I've been studying integral for about 12 years now, and I'm now in the field of mediation, conflict management, and conflict resolution, which I think has a lot of integral application, or at least potential for application. So I'm excited to be a part of this and to finally get a chance to do something with you, Devin, and with Emmanuel. So look forward to hearing more about everyone and going deeper into this course.
Excellent, Ryan. So it sounds like for you, the sort of context or application will be mediation and conflict resolution. Am I accurate in that?
Probably. I think another thing could be just generally how to build community, and I've been spending a lot of time building online integral communities and forming different groups. So mostly to see how community can be taken to the next level, whether it's an integral community or not. So something along those lines. We'll figure it out. Probably more that. All right.
Thanks, Ryan, and Janet and Cheryl. So you're aware, Ryan, Emmanuel, and I have, we initiated this Integral Campus initiative a number of months ago. So we do have that relationship as well. Sure, I'd love to learn more about you in a minute.
Hey, I'm Cheryl, and I've learned a little bit along the way about integral theory, but I'm really interested in learning more and how I can apply it, I think, more in my smaller community. So I've been in the work world, I've been in online education for about 15 years, but my bigger world, I feel like, is, a mother and a grandmother, and just using it in a small application of my community, as my family. Because, I just kind of feel like that's what I'm circling around back to after going out into the career world, and I'm still working, but maybe I'm not quite as focused at this stage in my life on my work as much as I am kind of coming back to myself, and then coming back to my family. So, yeah, maybe that's almost a minute.
That's so splendid, Cheryl, and I really appreciate the valuing and in your family, and that's wonderful. And I also want to point out that integral in many ways is a theory. It's also a framework. It's a sort of an orienting way of being as well. And so it's sometimes said that it's deep in theory and deep in practice and deep in reflection. And so I think that's really sort of kind of great when whether we look at families or organizations or bigger sort of systems. Yeah,
for my project, I think, my system, and to relate to what you're saying, is really right now the focus on myself and that inner peace. I am a seeker, I'm a lifelong learner, but it kind of comes back to me and what I'm getting out of my life and out of this path and out of this journey. So I really appreciate what you opened with, and the just the existential pieces of what makes meaning out of your life. And so I'm I'm looking forward to learning or, thinking more about that during this course. I'm really glad that you decided to do this.
Oh, thanks, Cheryl. And I'm really excited that all of us have something to contribute. I'm facilitating here, but the role of a facilitator is to it means make easy. It's to open up, and so it's not like a teacher student. It's not meant to be that at all. But it's meant to hold common and see where we go with this.
Yeah,
and experiment and have fun.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Devin.
Janet, so glad you're here today.
Thank you. How are you today? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm Janet. I live in Bellingham, Washington. Who I am in a quick minute. I am a mother of two beautiful grown daughters. I am a gardener. I'm a housekeeper. I'm a homemaker. That's what I am, as a homemaker. I love nature. What I do in my private time is, when I'm not doing all of those things, is reflecting on my own self. And reading Ken's paper, I discovered that I really do embrace the integral theory. That was a huge opening moment for me yesterday as I was reading that paper. And otherwise, I'm a massage therapist who's working more in the realm of energy than I am massage anymore. And I am fully certified as a holotropic breathwork facilitator, having become certified 2 years ago. That's who I am. Oh, and my project, I know that I have a place in helping community build and heal. And that's what my project is working on what my place is in that role.
So pleased that your place is right here, right now, Janet. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm quite tickled to be actually in a group of people who are of like mind. It's kind of rare, actually.
Beautiful.
Can I just ask a follow-up question to Janet?
Yes.
You said you live in Bellingham?
I live in Bellingham.
That's one of my favorite places. Have you ever been to the Hawaiian poke place over there?
I have not, but my office is 1 block up the street.
No kidding. That's one of my favorite places, like, in the entire planet. Like, I every time I go there, I go there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Well, now I'm going to have to go eat there.
Excellent.
Well, you come to Bellingham and look me up.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian.
Bellingham is a place that I've traveled through on many occasions. I'm from Western Canada, and I've lived on Vancouver Island, on Cortez Island, a little island off of Vancouver Island. So it's not too far from your town, Janet. And consider the Yukon my home. Grew up in the prairies in Canada. And,
wow.
I've traveled across the U.S. and I think everyone knows here that I traveled across the U.S. visiting American college towns. So I'm quite fascinated by the relationship between education and community, particularly in smaller towns, and sort of the philosophical underpinnings of that. My work in the world right now is, and I'm going to, Ryan and Emmanuel have both heard my wisdom profile, and you haven't heard this version because it shifted a fair bit since we've last talked. And my work in the world is about leading edge learning in small towns and small colleges. And in doing so, I aim aspirationally to facilitate people, including myself, to uncover and unfold our uniquely connected places in an evolving world. So about that place of life that we hold. And as mentioned earlier, my sort of prototype or project to hold what we're learning here together for me is seeing where we go with this course and this program, and to glean into what it means to be a reflective practitioner as we do it together. So that's me in a minute or so. All right. Well, thanks everybody for the wonderful welcomes. What I would like to do next is to open a conversation about what we read in the past week. We read an entry from Ken Wilber, and Ken Wilber is a very interesting fellow, and we're gonna explore more about the origins of integral theory, mostly next week when we go into the relationship with transpersonal psychology, of which Ken Wilber was a kind of an integral component early on. And Janet, I know you've worked with Stan Groff for his program, and so he's going to be a part of the video that we'll be discussing next week. But for right now, I'd love to hear any opening impressions on the Introduction to Integral Approach article. These opening impressions can be, I absolutely love it, this absolutely resonated, and it can also be, this caused some dissonance. What the heck is this guy talking about? So it's an open room right now.
Okay, I'll go. I think, being in this sort of meditative community, what was standing out for me was the parts about, I don't know if, I don't remember it verbatim, but just the parts about reflection, your inner being, the stillness. I know you mentioned a little bit about that in your opening, but I really liked that sort of that spaciousness of the stillness, and the, I guess, kind of going off of that a bit, sort of the stages of development, because where are you at any particular time with any of that, changes and develops, and yeah. So I it was a nice reminder that that's just an important piece. Yeah.
So Cheryl, was there anything that was maybe like really surprising that stood out to you as like, what is this about?
Well, for me, the part that is maybe surprising, or I have a little bit of trouble grasping, is that he'll talk sort of about maybe multiple things at once, stages, plus there was another word that he used that was kind of like, yeah. So sometimes when I struggle a little bit is trying to find out what's the difference between this and that he's talking about, because there are differences often in the same kind of sentence even. And so I'll have to read that and sort of reread that and go, oh, I'll grasp that for like, I don't know what my attention span is, 2-3 minutes maybe, and then I go on. So I think for me that's sort of the maybe challenges me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Cheryl. And I, personally, I really appreciate the way in which Ken Wilber writes in a very sort of, oftentimes very poetic and lovely and artistic way. But when he's talking about levels and stages and then throwing in states, levels and stages, we're talking same language here, but states are different in this. And so it can become very confusing and very conflated very quickly. And so at the time that Ken Wilber is writing this, he's essentially articulating 5 different elements of integral theory. And the one is levels, aka stages. Another one is the quadrants, and that's the AQAL, AQUAL. And then the other elements are, hey, we all have these multiple intelligences, which he calls lines, sometimes also calls intelligences. And then there are states. And so states are temporary. We can get them anytime and they go. But oftentimes, the longer time we're in these states, we end up living there. And it becomes like a home place. And then we call that stages. And there's some other kind of differentiating factors there. And then the other element is types. And types are really synonymous with styles. So he mentioned in this the masculine feminine. Well, this is like the dominant sort of typology, but we can look at say, for example, explanatory styles, pessimistic and optimistic. There's a lot of similarities with growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. These are all examples. Similarly, maximizing and satisficing decision styles. So these are examples of types as well. Okay, so just to go over again, we have levels or stages, and then we have lines or intelligences. We have states, and then we also have what am I missing here?
Did you mention types?
Types, styles, and states. I think we've got, and the quadrant, which brings it all together. Yes, so the 5 sort of elements of integral theory right there. Thanks for the little nudge.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say, well, first of all, we'll go into kind of more depth with each one of those in the next calls too. And then also, I find for me, it helps me to just kind of focus on 1 or 2 of those at first, and then kind of bring in the others as I go. So usually for me, kind of the quadrants and the stages are the 2 kind of primary elements that I look at first. And then, if there's more questions that come up, then maybe I look at like types or lines of development. But just, whatever kind of feels most easy, I think is kind of what I jump to as like kind of a first way. And I always kind of really like this analogy of like using different maps. So, this is like a map of an area. And the same way as you have like, you have some maps that show topography, and some maps that focus on waterways, and some maps that might focus on infrastructure. These are kind of different maps to look at the world around you. And so you can choose to look at it through through the quadrants, or you can choose to look at it through the stages. And then the more you overlay them, the more information you get. So that's just for me kind of one way of thinking about those kind of 5 different elements.
Yeah, excellent, Emmanuel. Ryan, Janet, any comments from the reading?
I definitely have some comments. I first struggled with the fact that it was 46 pages and I couldn't print it. I'm the massage therapist who likes to touch and handle things, so so I had to read it in spurts. It got to be, I'm going to use the term scientific, a little bit on the scientific side for me at first, and when I stepped away from it and just let what I read absorb into me, I was able to go back to it and really embrace it and fully recognize that even though I've never had the words for the levels, the stages, the types, and that it's very much what I do for myself as I'm moving through my day or moving through my week or moving through a particular instance is that integral process. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And what else was I going to say? That's about it, actually.
And so, Janet, it sounds like this is eye-opening for you, and that you're doing these things, and now there's to use Emmanuel's metaphor or analogy, now there's a map that kind of names that in a way. Yeah.
I learned, through my healing time, both training and taking my mat time for holotropic breath work. I learned how to. We have this thing called the yoga of the cross, and I learned how to take whatever experience I was having, and all at a personal level, mind you, because I've been on the healing path as a cocaine addict, suicidal, severely depressed, and very abused, and I got from there to here, and I'm doing really well. And what the tools that I came away with from holotropic breathwork were, you know, these triggers, to take these triggers, these moments where I wasn't feeling heard, or I was feeling less than, or what have you, or put out upon, or whatnot. And we have this process that we call taking it vertical. And I'm recognizing that this whole map that is being described in Ken's paper is that vertical. It's like a map through that vertical, rather than just going vertical, rather than just having a willy-nilly direction of going up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Janet, I'd love to learn a little more about what taking it vertical means.
Oh, well, in our teachings in holotropic breathwork, and it wasn't Stan that came up with this. It was Tav Sparks, who took over holotropic breathwork from Stan. What it is, you're walking along horizontally through life, doing your daily thing, and something happens on that horizontal that triggers you, makes you angry, makes you mad, makes you sad, makes you want to act out, what have you. Rather than reacting, what the whole taking it vertical means is to stop for a moment, to think about what it is that you're experiencing, and take a moment and take it vertical. Take it back into your life, all the way back to when you're a baby, if that's what you need to do, and find a moment in time where that same thing, that same feeling that you have right now was also present. And there's a healing magic that happens in that, and recognizing that you know, Joe Blow over here just really pissed me off, and it's a familiar thing, and so I go back and I look at this familiar thing elsewhere, and I recognize that it's really not about him, that what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing is not about him. Who, did we lose me?
I can hear you, Janet. We've had somebody call in right now, and maybe you can put yourself on mute.
Put myself on mute?
Whoever just called in.
Oh.
Yeah, I put them on mute.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Carry on, Janet.
Yeah, so then, rather than reacting to this person who just triggered you, it becomes taking it vertical and experiencing and allowing yourself to see where that first experience was, gives you a moment of time in which you can actually formulate a response rather than a reaction. And that's really it in a nutshell. I mean, we have whole long classes that teach about this. So in just a few minutes, it's hard to really give the whole spiel, but it's really about learning how to switch your reaction from a trigger into something that's a response. It's more loving, that's more kind, to not just the person who's standing in front of you or the situation that's in front of you, but for yourself.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Janet, for that flip the switch and the importance of that healing process, and later on we'll go into a little bit about cleaning up as well, and a bit about psychological shadow work. And I really appreciate the background that you bring in the holotropic breath work in that. We've had a Hawaii phone number call in here, and I wonder who's on the telephone now.
This is Rob. I apologize for my late joining.
Good day, Rob. We're really glad to have you with us here today. Would you maybe just briefly introduce yourself in a minute or less?
Sure. My name's Rob. I'm currently pursuing life coaching and like financial trading, unrelated. And I'm here to. I mean, definitely my topic of development is definitely stepping into that life coaching role. That's what I want to be focusing on this group with.
Excellent. Glad you could join us here today, Rob. And that's certainly an area of interest for at least a couple people here in the room, including myself. So glad you're here with us.
Cool.
Right now, what we're doing is, we're offering initial impressions on the Ken Wilber introduction to the integral approach. And so you're gonna go to Ryan and see if he has any comments, and then we'll go to Rob. Go to you, Rob. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to just real quick. Hi, Rob, and
hey, Emmanuel.
So Rob was at school with us, so Devin and I know him, and he's also taking a similar coaching or the same coaching program that Devin and I actually went through, which is an integral coaching training. And so I'm really excited that you're joining in and probably going to bring some perspective to the group. And I also wanted to respond to Janet real quick, if that's okay, because so Janet, I had the chance to do a holotropic breathwork session a few months ago, and it was a really powerful experience. And also, you mentioned this idea of going vertical, and
Yes.
in kind of developmental psychology, and Wilber also talk about this idea of vertical development versus horizontal development. And we'll probably go a little more into that in one of our future classes. But just real brief, the idea is, horizontal development is essentially like staying in the same kind of worldview or paradigm that you're currently at and just getting better at that. And then vertical development is basically the idea of, developing a new worldview and a new paradigm that's more complex and more inclusive than the one that you're currently at. And that usually takes, strong experiences to kind of wake up to that.
Yes.
So just a short response to what you were saying, and thanks for sharing it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
And hey, Rob, I'm gonna mute you, okay?
Okay.
Excellent. Throughout the program, I'll often be referring to kind of a suite of reflective practices. One of them is a translative practice, and a translative practice occurs in the horizontal plane. And so you're essentially trading something for another. A transformative practice occurs on the vertical trajectory, and so you're actually upshifting the worldview. And then a transcendental practice, is touching into that stillness, that spaciousness, that silence that we attempted to touch into early on. So a quick note on that. So thanks, Emmanuel. Thanks, Janet. Ryan, any impressions on the introduction to integral approach?
Not really, but I just want to appreciate you sharing a little bit of your story, Janet, and sharing about some of the difficulties that you've endured. And I currently work for the Department of Human Services doing note-taking for some of their family decision meetings. And what's been on my mind recently is how a lot of people have really had a lot of struggles in their life and are currently in a very difficult place with their child being taken away from them for various reasons. And I've just been obsessing over like what can really help these people. You have in the situation a bunch of well-educated lawyers and caseworkers and social workers lecturing to these people that they need to get their lives together and get financially stable and move away from their parents and so on and so forth. And it's a little difficult for me to be in that environment and just take notes, not really play a proactive role in helping them. And so I've been thinking very deeply about like what really catalyzes that deep level of healing and transformation. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed, Ryan. And appreciation, of course, recognizing our current value and also recognizing and recognizing that value is increasing. So it's both now, here, and nowhere. And so I think there's appreciation that's held here today. Rob, any comments on the article or the integral approach, how that might fit into your life generally?
Maybe I should unmute him. I just unmuted you.
I apologize. I didn't read the article. I've just come out of a 5-day Sikh wedding that was kind of full on. Commenting on what I believe Janet was saying about how, just taking time to respond instead of just being, triggered into a reaction. I just experienced something like that on Facebook where someone took something very personal and made an attack on me, and just really kind of taking the time to respond in a thoughtful, compassionate way, and still holding my own truth was, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. And when you are able to do that, people recognize it.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. And it sounds like 5 days in a Sikh wedding is probably a lot more impactful than a 46-page article.
It was intense. I was also helping, set everything up and break everything down. So it was definitely an intense week.
I really appreciate at the beginning of the article how there's a reference to different ways of knowing across the world. And many years ago, we wouldn't have that same sort of access to different ways of knowing. And one area that I'm very interested in is the relationship, essentially an epistemological relationship between different ways of knowing. So, for example, data, it's all coming from the outside. When we build a little pattern around that, we call that information. And then when we continue to build patterns around that and bring sort of an interior perspective, we create knowledge out of that. And these are like the center of gravity of where we are culturally. And a big part of that has to do with access to these different philosophies and these different ways of knowing from across the world. And in doing so, we can touch into, what might be a pinnacle or an epitome of all that is and ever was and ever will be reflected in this wisdom. And this wisdom, again, reflective and in this sort of enduring unity, this nature that is ever present, and simultaneously recognizing what our role is and what our place in this evolving world is. And so I really appreciate the way in which the article started off, kind of pointing to these cultural diversities and how that influences our ways of knowing. Any comments anywhere throughout the article? We touched into all these different elements. I'm thinking of the psychograph right now. It's called a psychograph. So there's all these different intelligences, all these different lines, and some might be way up here, and others might be down there. If we have a psychograph that's like there, it's all jagged. What does that do to this notion that we should be well-rounded people? It's an inquiry. Any perspectives?
Sorry, is this directed at me or just to the table?
It's directed at the table to anyone.
I think that, naturally we're going to have different strengths and different weaknesses. This idea of the psychograph being, more and less developed in different aspects of life is, that's something everyone faces. I think there's something to be said for a willingness to work on our weaknesses, but also to play our strengths. I don't think that anyone can ever be, completely rounded out in their development, but but certainly to develop our weaknesses and utilize our strengths to their full capacity would be the ideal way to go in my perspective.
Yeah, yeah. You know, something that I often think about is how vulnerabilities fits in there. And it seems to me like on the horizontal axis, we have strengths and weaknesses.
Mm.
But on the vertical axis, we have vulnerabilities and strengths. In other words, an emptiness and a fullness.
Mm.
Well said.
And there is like a fullness implies that, you know, it's fulfilled. So you take like a tree, or this notion that of layering, multiple layers, or a holarchy. And I think we have to like crack things open, like crack open the shell to reveal what's inside. Yeah. There's another element that's something I think about a lot. And, you know, going back to the original essence of the word integral, or integrity, or integrated, or integrative, it's about making whole, or making complete, or making comprehensive, or bringing together elements that might be disparate into that. And so we often think that it's important to balance different elements. But is it really? If there's this notion of integrating and bringing together, should everything be balanced? Just inquiries.
I guess what I'm thinking about right now is that, yeah, maybe about the balance is not so much, maybe no, because while sometimes I'm feeling maybe balanced, or I guess what I'm trying to say is, what I'm thinking about, what I'm inquiring about is, sometimes when you have a life event or a reason to sort of change and break out of your patterns and your mode, and you know it's an opportunity for growth, you feel that it is, but you're kind of going along every day with your habits, and you fall into these patterns that are comfortable, or just that you do. And then, like for myself, I'll like down the road, in my day, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I was going to concentrate on this other thing that I want to develop or grow on. But like, it's not that I didn't really have time. I'm just kind of living out those patterns and those things I'm comfortable with. So in some ways it kind of relates to what you're saying, because I might feel a bit balanced because that's what I'm used to. That's where I find my homeostasis, is in kind of the comfortable. What am I comfortable with today, And so I have a little bit of trouble, I think sometimes, yeah. I'm circling, or I'm kind of talking in circles. You know what I'm thinking?
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful that you're, running around in circles here. And when we talk about these habits, these are like the clothes we wear. And sometimes we want to switch our clothes, and sometimes it's not necessary to do that. And like, these are like kind of translative practices. It can be so impactful to, get rid of something and simply replace it with other. And other times, a worldview shift, a transformative practice is much, much, much more kind of worthy. And so, some of my thinking is that this balancing happens on a horizontal plane, whereas the integration is more about the vertical. And, it's not good to be a big tall balloon and, have nothing down here. Similarly, it's not optimal, I think, to be just down here, but to be like a robust balloon that holds both of these dimensions, that is, balanced here in these different lines. And also, as Rob pointed out, is aware of these strengths and often we can serve with these strengths, which is positive psychology tells us is how we engage in this meaningful life instead of just the good life where we use our strengths, where we actually are serving others, serving our telos, our dharmic dance, unfolding our work in the world, whatever that is, whether that's family or, work or whatever it is. So I'm yapping away here. I'm gonna be quiet and listen.
Yeah, I was gonna, in response to what Cheryl said, I think one of the kind of concepts that I've been working with that I find interesting is kind of this idea of healthy discomfort or healthy challenges. So kind of like in a similar way to like going to the gym or going for a run, or on a physical level, we do these things that make us uncomfortable in the short run, but we know that they're healthy in the long run. And I think a similar thing we can do in our psychological lives as well. So like signing up, or like teaching a class is like, it's scary and it's uncomfortable, but I know that I'm going to grow through that and maybe get to a point that I wouldn't otherwise. So this idea, of kind of putting myself out there a little bit and accepting challenges, even though I know that it might be uncomfortable or challenging, because I know that there's going to be growth coming out of that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does that kind of resonate with what you were saying, Cheryl?
Yeah, it does. And there's like this little mystery dance in there with, like feeling comfortable, feeling balanced, but just giving it that little bit of, shove, and that bit of hardness where you do grow from it. It just, even at small increments, I think it's good. I think we don't always tend to bring it on. Like, we have to kind of be mindful of it, intentional, go like, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah, I also kind of, coming back to the article, I also feel like, the article, it's a pretty long piece of writing, and it kind of touches on all the 5 different elements of integral theory. And I think, as we kind of work more with them, they're going to become more familiar, and the language is going to become more familiar, because that's one of the things that I've found is like the language has become more familiar when I talk with other people that are familiar with the same language. It makes it much easier to kind of communicate concepts and ideas that otherwise would probably take a lot to explain. So with like a good example is kind of the stages of development, and Wilbur talks in the article about pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. Is that what he calls them in the article? I think. And just having that additional lens to look at the world around us and people around us, and even organizations, is something that I found really helpful in my life, to kind of get like a shortcut or a clear, or like a simplification of like really complex problems and issues. Yeah.
Rob, we can hear your sound. Do you have any comments?
Oh, I just unmuted him because
okay.
I can't tell if he's saying something or not, and I don't know if he knows how to unmute himself. Rob, do you know how to unmute yourself?
No, I don't. Not on a phone call. I don't know how.
Okay, I don't know either how you do it on a phone call, so I just keep muting and unmuting you, and there's a pause.
Okay, well,
I'm driving at the moment, so it's a little bit.
Yeah, we can hear the background noise.
I see.
We're about to wrap up our 60-minute call here, and so I'd encourage us all to wrap up with essentially a me in a minute. So what I mean by that is any final comments in about a minute or less. And Emmanuel, could we get you to start, and then Rob and Ryan and Cheryl and Janet, and then we'll close for today. So any final comments as we close out today?
Yeah, I'm really excited that we got this course, I guess, started, and really happy to have a few people that joined us today, and looking forward to kind of future discussions as we all get kind of more familiar with the concepts and ideas of integral theory and how it applies to, kind of our personal life and the projects that we're involved in the world. And yeah, thanks, Cheryl and Janet and Robbie and Ryan for joining us. Yeah, that's it.
All right, Rob, any closing comments today?
Yeah, like more of a question. Just wanted to know what the what the goal, what the objective of this group is. I mean, I understand to each develop, I guess vertically. This group is not necessarily going to facilitate horizontal development, but other than vertical development, are there any other goals of this meeting?
Rob, the overall goal of the program, whatever that unfolds to be, is to explore what this means to be a reflective practitioner, so that we can establish a series of reflective practices to engage in our work, in our project. This specific kind of anchoring goal of this specific course, that is the next 7 weeks together, is about learning the basic elements of the integral approach, which I understand that you're quite aware of, and I think we can also hopefully build a kind of a robustness around that as well.
Great, sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Ryan?
I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm actually not feeling very well. I have an eye infection, so I'm a little under the weather. I'm kind of just resting and taking it in. But yeah, I'm really excited about this going forward, and great to meet everyone. So thank you.
Appreciate it, you joining us here today, Ryan. Cheryl?
In a minute here. Well, I'm really looking forward to learning just more about integral theory and practice and the reflective practice. And well, I feel very service oriented. I'm really at this part of my life kind of pulling it into me. So I'm really looking forward to applying these theories to myself and my personal growth, and see where it goes. And I feel like the course is just a huge opportunity, and then having a group, this group is really a huge opportunity too.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the value. And Wilbur speaks of the big three in terms of Buddhist Sangha Dharma. So it's this this Buddha nature, this deepest, highest, most generative self, and it's also a cohort or a community that understands and supports that in service of this specific dharma, or this direction, this purpose. And so thanks for bringing that forth. And Janet?
Thank you. My last closing moment, I'm not just a student of consciousness, I am also a particle of consciousness. And I've been working to understand not just my own level of consciousness, but for a long time. I've been on this journey for a really long time, and I'm looking really forward to seeing how this course helps me further where I've already been, and yeah, holotropic breathwork came into my world at a point when I recognized that counselors didn't work anymore, and holotropic breathwork came into my world, and I became very explained, and I can go into that later. But anyway, that's where I'm at. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for explaining that, Janet, as well as introducing, taking us vertical here today. And
Welcome.
I'm going to repeat again that, a big part of this is so that we become more and more of who we already are.
Right.
And then can more freely and fully offer our, unique gifts into the world. And that world includes ourselves. And
yes.
So I'm really appreciative of you, Janet, and Cheryl, and Ryan, and Rob, and Emmanuel, for gathering here today. And we'll do it again in a week. I'll be sending out next week's video, probably tonight, and we're going to go into a bit of the history of how Integral came into being, and we'll also explore states. So these are the temporary states, and the video is essentially the narrative of how transpersonal psychology came into being. So that's it for today. Much appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.